A lack of diversity has real costs. A recent study found companies with above average diversity in management produced innovation revenue that was 19% higher than the earnings of companies with below average diversity in leadership. Numerous studies also show that women-led companies tend to perform better than those led by men. In fact, companies in the top 25th percentile for gender diversity on their executive teams were 21% more likely to experience above average profits. Put simply, diverse and inclusive businesses can significantly improve your bottom line and outperform your competitors. The stats do not lie. But it's not just about profits. Inclusive businesses drive more innovation, retain employees, attract top-tier talent, and hit many other business metrics that lead to long-term sustainable growth. And it's not enough just to listen and learn. It's time to take action. The small business community can really drive the inclusive movement from the ground up and reshape strategy around training and hiring to provide pathways for diversity. That's why we're sitting down today to understand how we can keep moving the needle forward and make inclusion the norm, not the exception. From marketing strategies to staffing plans, we're going to discuss how to build diversity and inclusion into the culture, customer service, and staffing of your small business to create lasting change and avoid performative action. So let's get into it. I'm excited to welcome back my co-hosts, Deepica Mutyala, founder and CEO, Live Tinted, Arian Simone, general partner, co-founder, and investor at Fearless Fun. Hello, ladies. Today is the final episode of our Priceless Conversation series. I've truly loved the opportunity to have these important discussions with you all and to provide much needed information, tools, and resources for the small business community. For those of you joining us who missed the first 3 episodes, do not worry. You can catch up by heading to Create and Cultivate's YouTube channel. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Today, we are also joined by Marisa Grimes, Inclusion and Diversity Lead at Mastercard. Welcome, Marisa. Okay, so now let's dive into our topic for today on how we can foster an inclusive small business community. So let's kick it off with some stats. New research reinforces the business case for diversity. Business in top quartile for racial and ethnic diversity are 35% more likely to have financial returns in national industry mediums. So what does it mean to be truly inclusive? Arian, I'll start with you.
To truly be inclusive, people have to realize that we use the terms diversity and inclusion so loosely. So a company that has a $100 million, say, marketing budget, and they want to get into more of a diverse space, and they allot, I would say, like 0.5% of that budget to minority suppliers. I said, no, that's diversity, but that's not inclusion. So something inclusive means that you truly are reflecting the demographics that exist. So as an African-American woman, if we are 14% of the population, then we need to be 14% of the budget, because at the end of the day, from a consumer standpoint, I know we're spending. So to truly be inclusive is just that, to where the numbers add up inclusively.
Yeah, I think for me, it has to be clear on all pieces of the business across all tiers. Like, I think a lot of times what I'm seeing now, especially in the beauty industry, is we're seeing diversity and inclusion across campaigns. You see the token, most likely, of each race, which again, that also is a whole other discussion I could have in depth, but it's beyond the campaigns. To me, that's at the baseline. And then taking it a step like a layer behind that, it's like the products you're creating, are they inclusive? But then beyond that, it's like, are your employees that are actually giving their opinions and mindset behind these campaigns inclusive? Beyond that, people on your investor board and your board, it has to be at every layer. It can't just be a checking the box situation. That's the only way we're gonna have true, diverse, and inclusive opinions and businesses being formed. I'm so passionate.
And true change, because it's more than just a social media post.
Yes.
What you're talking about, you hit the nail on the head. It's not the aesthetics. It's this diversity and inclusion embodied in the fabric of your business in its totality.
Yes. Yes.
Marisa, I'll toss it to you as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think at Mastercard, when we think about inclusion, we really focus on inclusive behavior. And especially for our people, you talked a lot about, our people and what that means for employees at a company. And we think about inclusion as a leadership skill set that everyone needs to develop so that they can know how to build and keep diverse teams, right? So everything that we do is through the lens of building inclusive leadership. And building that muscle throughout the organization and really modeling what inclusive leadership looks like in practice. And from that, other things stem from that. So your hiring practices, the way that you develop talent, the way that you reach diverse suppliers, and the way that you invest in communities, and especially in reflecting the culture within your company.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've seen a lot of, Fortune 500 companies step up, talk about this, and start making changes for the better. But what can small business owners do to implement diversity initiatives that make a longer term impact?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to that as a small business. There was a lot of challenges being out there about companies and how many diverse employees they have in their company. And for me, with a team of 5 humans, it's all about percentage, right? Like we have 1 Black employee of 5, and it's like, and a lot of our business is contractors. So it's not even just full-time employees, but it's like, it's so integral. It was like a no-brainer to me almost when we started this business that you had to have diverse opinions to have true, a company that really fosters ideas and mindsets that are diverse. And so for me, we hired slower but stronger, and to me, stronger means diverse. And so we didn't, I'll be very honest with you, it took us a long time to find the right hires because it was important to me to have different mindsets be involved with the company. And so yeah, I think for me, it was just about growing slower and more diverse.
At the end of the day, it's better for your bottom line. And it's been proven in McKinsey reports, consulting reports, et cetera. It's just better for your bottom line to have more opinions to the table when it comes to building strategies for your business. Yeah. So I would say, to answer your question, that I would challenge small businesses to take the same exact approach that we're challenging the big Fortune 500 companies to.
Absolutely. So Marisa, you lead diversity and inclusion efforts at Mastercard for the North American region. How can small businesses do better to ensure inclusivity is in both their marketing strategies as well as their staffing plans?
Sure. Yeah. So I think first, every business really needs to get clear on why they are doing this work and what they want to achieve. Because it's critical to communicate that to your employees, to your customers, to your partners. They need to understand what you stand for and why this work matters. And I think small businesses are really in a perfect position to build inclusivity into their business from the start, especially if you're just starting out, because you don't have the problem of dismantling systems like a lot of large companies that have been around for a long time. You can really incorporate inclusion and diversity by design, by being very intentional about the work that you're doing, ensuring your employees are representative of all types of backgrounds and perspectives, and that your marketing really reflects the voices and the customers that you're serving.
Absolutely. So what steps should we take to eliminate bias from our hiring processes? I know that's been a big challenge for small businesses.
Yeah, I mean, I think about this in 2 ways. I think there are two aspects. I think there's the systems, right? So you have to have the right systems in place to ensure that there's a level playing field and that there are no unintended barriers to attracting and hiring people just because of aspects of their identity, right? So for example, making sure that your job descriptions have gender neutral language, and that they're culturally sensitive, or that if someone has a disability is interviewing for a job, that the necessary accommodations are put in place. And then the second piece is around behavior. So that's how you're educating hiring managers on how bias manifests itself, and making them more aware of their own potential blind spots and preconceptions. I think those are just a few ways that you can overcome some of the potential challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's so important. So how do we get beyond the performative nature of inclusivity and diversity? So you mentioned we're throwing around this word, and it's not necessarily getting to the core of what's actually happening. And a lot of brands have been accused of being performative. So how do we move this beyond a trend and into the mainstream?
Yeah, so the way I see it is when I grew up, and I'm doing the lens on the beauty industry because that's my world, but when I grew up, there wasn't even a token brown girl in a campaign. There wasn't even a token black girl in a campaign, right? So what we're seeing now is almost this like middle ground shift where there is as frustrating as it was when I was in the campaigns as the token brown girl, at least I was like, there's finally a token, which to me was like, of course it drove me a little crazy. It felt performative. However, when you think about the next generation and the lens that they're seeing in these companies where they're finally seeing themselves reflected, to me, my hope and goal is that by going through this kind of icky period of performative behavior by companies, which is absolutely the case in some brands, it will lead to a future where diversity and inclusion is a must in a business. It's no longer a trend. It's no longer a conversation of if we're going to have it. It's just a baseline part of the business. So I kind of feel like, to me, we're in the very middle, muddy ground right now that we have to go through this. We have to speak about this to one day get to a place where it's just the standard.
I would say from the industry that I definitely work in, that if it's not equitable, it's just not equal.
Yes.
So as long as it's like performative and it just looks good, at the end of the day, like I said, if it's not equitable, it's not equal. And what I mean by that is, you cannot come to a table to negotiate anything from a subservient position. So if women are receiving as a whole less than 5% of venture fund investments, women of color under 1%, like I said, I know black women, we're at 0.00006%. I'm pretty sure Deepica's probably on the same end with me at the end of the day. And it's just like, okay, no, this has to be equitable in order for this to be equal. And then therefore we can make some progress.
And I feel like consumers are smart. They feel when that genuine nature from a business and the efforts in place are performative versus not. So customers are going to call brands out, and it's almost this like, I am not team cancel culture. I am anti-cancel culture. But I will say, like, it's kind of a necessary period we have to go through to get to a place where brands recognize they have to do this.
Leads me right into my next question. Thoughts on cancel culture? So what do you think the ripple effect is? How should we deal with companies who got it wrong, have been ousted on social media? Like, what's the alternative to cancel culture?
Well, the reality is companies who have gotten it wrong, you're still in existence. You can always just start today. Like, there's nothing wrong with just starting today. There's nothing wrong with taking ownership. I think the easiest way to start today is to take the ownership, to say, you know what, we've messed up. And this is what this looks like. And this is how we plan to correct this. So a lot of people did issue a lot of statements out, this summer with Black Lives Matter, saying that they were going to help the Black and brown communities in these ways. And I will say that at least it was ownership to say, you know what, we kind of messed up before, but we're willing to take these steps and just holding them accountable. And there's nothing wrong. Like, people are human. I guess I look at things just from a very optimistic lens. I'm very hopeful about the future now that a lot of awareness has been placed in this area. And you just move on from there. But you don't do the same thing, because it's going to still result in the same thing.
Even if I've been frustrated by things I've seen, instead of calling people out, I choose to lead by example. I want to create a brand that's setting a standard for the industry. You're still going to make mistakes, and it's important to take accountability for it.
Yeah, I do think there is a shift to accountability culture for sure. So Marisa, how can businesses, both large and small, set measurable diversity goals and track their progress along the way?
Sure. One thing I think is, not hiding from the data. You can't sugarcoat the data. The data, is real, and I think you need to be real about where you are and very clear about where you want to go. So, this work is a journey. It's, these issues are systemic issues that are not going to be solved overnight. And this work is going to continue to evolve. So I think businesses, both large and small, have to be diligent about setting benchmarks and establishing specific goals based on the gaps that they see in their businesses and the areas of opportunity that they want to solve for. And then you have to sit down and you have to review the data regularly. You have to share that with the leadership teams. And you have to make sure that you're making progress. And if not, you need to figure out why. And then you course correct along the way. So, data is your friend, especially when it comes to tracking diversity goals.
Absolutely. And speaking of, Mastercard recently announced a $500 million commitment focused on closing the racial, wealth, and opportunity gap across America over the next 5 years. So how can we hold companies and brands accountable for their actions and do better overall without necessarily canceling them?
Yeah. I love the idea of the accountability culture. Absolutely. Because yes, obviously the $500 million commitment is very exciting for us. And this came out of our In Solidarity Action Plan that we laid out back in June. And that is our roadmap for addressing different inequities that exist for both our people, so internally at Mastercard, as well as the markets that we serve and the society that we live in. And so closing the racial wealth and opportunity gap is really a key piece in how we want to address the needs of Black communities to ensure that not being left out and not being left behind. So that investment will go towards working in cities across the country to reach financially vulnerable communities, to support small Black-owned businesses, so many of which have been impacted by COVID over the last several months, and to provide different tools and resources that they need to survive and to thrive. And you pointed out earlier, a lot of companies have made similar commitments and put in place D&I plans in the wake of George Floyd's murder. And people will be watching very closely to see who delivers on those commitments. So while I can speak firsthand, no company, no brand wants to find itself in the crosshairs of public scrutiny. Before this D&I role, I worked in communications for many years for several companies. So I know this and I know what it's like. But I also know as a consumer what it feels like when a brand that you love just gets it wrong and doesn't live up to or deliver on its values and promises. So we do need to hold companies accountable to do better. And for me, I'm very proud that Mastercard really is a very purpose-driven company. We put our money where our values are, and we work every day to live up to the commitments that we've made to make this world a better place. And no company, no person is perfect. And, we shouldn't have the expectation of perfection, but as consumers, we do hold the power and we vote with our dollars. So I think that's how we hold companies accountable.
Absolutely.
We vote with our dollar. Yes.
Vote with our dollar. And women in business are a driving force in the nation's flourishing economy. Case in point, if we want to see higher stock returns, higher overall profit, and a higher return of equity, we have to hire women and put them in leadership roles. Don't believe me? Let's just look at these stats. Companies with a female founder perform 63% better than investments with all male founding teams, and businesses founded by women deliver twice as much per dollar invested than those founded by men. Clearly the whole point of your entire business. So why are the numbers of women in leadership still so low?
That it's so disappointing, only because when women, as you even stated, as far as founding businesses, we put the money even back into our families and our communities. Where the money goes when you empower women, it's a much better place, a much better world. And I'm not saying that, of course, we're women, we have all these superpowers, which we do, but it's just true. The data has proven that. At the end of the day, it's still a boys' club. That's why it's hard to get as many women in leadership as possible. It's definitely still a boys' club. And so often we do look for a lot of, I would say, allies in the area of different racial groups, but we're gonna have to look for them in men too. So we are going to have to see, okay, what men are out there that are truly championing gender equality? Because we need your help. And that's what it is at the end of the day, because the numbers, like you said, don't lie. The data is there, so why is this an issue? It's because some of you all do not want to let go of your power and let us in at the end of the day. So it's gonna take for some men who are on the mission of gender equality with us and that are advocates with us.
And I think it's hard for people to see what they haven't seen. So the best thing that I think, like sitting next to the both of you here, is like seeing as many women, diverse women out there starting businesses is the hope that the next generation is gonna see and say, wow, I can do this too. What we didn't see growing up, right? We saw an all boys club. And again, I think we're in this period of a flip that's happening in diversity. And so it's exciting.
It's a great time.
It honestly
is. Like, I know there's been so much disruption, but there's so much hope. Even my father, who he represented Rosa Parks when I was growing up, and seeing just so much in the civil rights movement. And he called me and he said, Arian, I have hope.
Oh.
And I was like, Daddy, I do too. And he was like, no, he said, he said, the younger generation, you said, you guys are different.
We are different. And the other thing is when you're a woman and you're at the top, bring people up with you is so important. I feel that energy sitting next to two people here, someone who's an investor in my company, someone who just asked to invest in my company.
Well, I'm serious. I'm so serious.
Saying, like, I think there's something real to that, right? We cannot be pinning each other. We are stronger together. On your wall right there, it says collaboration over competition. We have to come up together. It's the only way.
And
Yes.
also to that point, I always like to stress that that doesn't necessarily mean making like a huge investment. That's literally just buying products
Yes.
from women-owned businesses. It's hiring a female-owned florist for your event, a female-owned caterer, whatever it might be. Like those small things have such larger generational impact when it comes to money. So I think that's just an important thing to think about. It's such an easy thing, and it's probably something you don't even realize when you're shopping or online. Just spend money with women because that makes such a huge difference. So, too much of the world was designed without women in mind and without women involved. So inequality and exclusion still hold women back. But Mastercard is tackling this problem head on with their Path to Priceless initiative, and mentorship is a huge part of that. So Marisa, how can we support female founders to lessen the barriers to entry and amplify their impact?
Yeah, I mean, way too much of our world was designed without any aspect of diversity in mind, frankly, right? So, I mean, yes, we have been chipping away at this for a long time. And I think making really good progress towards really thinking about how we reshape the world, the way the world is designed, and bringing diverse perspectives to the table. So the Path to Priceless initiative is really meant to unlock opportunities and possibilities for women entrepreneurs. So we committed to reaching 1 million women business owners through mentorship and guidance and other resources that we've been providing to them. And I think the way that we support them is by continuing to demand that female founders get the same respect and the same access to opportunities as their male counterparts. And Mastercard is absolutely going to continue to deliver, solutions to support them and to help create a level playing field. But, we encourage other companies to step up and do the same as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important. I do have to give kudos to Mastercard. When all of the pandemic hit and obviously a lot of our events got canceled, Mastercard really stepped up to the plate to support our female-owned small business, which can't be said for all brands. It's true.
No.
It's true. So we talked a little bit about mentorship. So did you guys have mentors?
It's a huge part of what I credit my success to. I really believe, that's not to discredit myself, but I really believe that speaking to people who have been through the journey that you want to go through is the best way to see yourself in their shoes one day. And I feel very fortunate to have learned from their mistakes for me to go through and I just can't wait to serve that same role for somebody else. It's just so fulfilling, right? It's like, why are we doing all of this? It's to give back, to create like a better world. And so, yes, I think mentors are game changers.
Oh yeah, I believe in paying it forward. And I know that people have given so much to me and have poured so much into me. I wouldn't be here, like Deepica said, if it wasn't for the people who, taught me and opened doors for me as well too.
But you know what? Getting those mentors is like up to the individual. Like you have to be the one. You can't, so many people ask like, how do you find the mentor? And it's like, it is up to you and your hustle, your grind, your research to find out who it is that you want to replicate in their business or learn from their business and go out there and make it happen. They're not gonna come to you. You need to go there and also recognize people's time is finite and very, very valuable. So what is it that you can say to them that makes it feel worth it to their time to want to have 5 minutes with you? That's the key.
I was gonna definitely hone in on that because the relationship has to be mutual and it has to be of value. So you're right, if somebody's time is limited, the biggest compliment you can give them is implement the advice they gave you. They will continue to pour into you.
Absolutely. And also, I'm an advisor to a lot of different companies. And so it's really, when they have skin in the game, they're invested. So I think that's also important to look at when you're building your company. Like, how can you create a relationship that's mutually beneficial as well? So everyone here is a member of Mastercard's Women Business Council Advisory, and each of you help empower and advise the small businesses around you, as well as help Mastercard ensure solutions to continue meet the evolving needs of this entire segment. So what more can be done to support small businesses across the board and amplify the inclusive mission? What changes do you guys really want to see?
Of course, mine is definitely access to capital. That's why I said I already know mine.
So important.
Yeah, and those statistics are so alarming. Those disparities are so concerning, especially when the stats show that we just continue to overperform. So that's one thing, of course, I would want to see is more access to capital, more mentorship, and just a more inclusive network.
Absolutely. And Marisa, how can small business owners use their platform to make sure they're serving everyone, especially people who have been historically overlooked or underrepresented?
We've talked a lot at Mastercard about the idea of being consciously inclusive. So I think small businesses can be very intentional about how they use their platforms to shine a light on underrepresented communities. We all know how much representation matters. And so seeing people who look like you being highlighted and celebrated just makes a huge difference. And I think it's hard to be all things to all people, right? But I think you can absolutely be conscious about including all perspectives and all people in the work that you're doing. And so, small business owners, I think, absolutely have that opportunity to do that and to use their platforms in that way.
She said the key word, intentional.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, you have to be intentional. We have all individually grown up in our cultures, just by default. It's just by default, it's who we are. But in order to do that, you just have to be intentional.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about fundraising. So you raise money, you give money.
Deploy capital.
We got both ends of the
Santa Claus
spectrum here.
We still have to raise from investors.
And
of
you
course,
still have to
we
raise.
invested.
You raise, deploy, raise,
Yeah.
deploy. So what is the key advice that you would give women who are looking for access to capital on both sides?
Anytime I always tell people that's trying to get an investor's attention, there are two key things. Your brand story is going to grab somebody's attention. And then, of course, your traction, whether it's your financials or however your traction just shows up. Like Deepica's traction is definitely in her community. And her community was built way before even the business. Yeah. So often we hear the term product market fit. I feel like she had market product fit. She already had
feeling this match already.
This is a productive day.
I know. But this is happening. I'm serious. I don't want to get out of here. I'm like, I've already looked at my purse like, where's my checkbook? Like, I'm very serious. Just send me the note. But those two are key things that people definitely, it's going to grab somebody's attention. Of course, there's so many other layers and so much other diligence that you go through. But when you can step to the door with those two things, you have people's attention. Yeah. I know even on my end, when I have to raise to institutional investors and we have to go present, I run them the story of me being the 21-year-old Black girl that was raising capital at college. And I'm like, I made a promise to myself then that I was going to be the business investor that I was looking for. So I start off with that story, and then I run down, of course, the credentials and the credits and everybody else who's invested and who are the portfolio companies, and they're like, okay, where do we sign up? But those two things I would say are key for women who are looking for access to capital. Make sure your brand story is tight and make sure you can prove the traction.
And then I think on my end, what I learned going through the process was really know your worth. When I was getting approached by different investors, at the beginning of it, you're like, they want to invest in me, like, oh my gosh. But then really think about, Deepica, where do you see this brand in 10 years, 20 years, the legacy you're going to create? Is that somebody that you want to be married to? Because somebody investing in your business is a marriage. They are a part of your company. And I really had to get smart and think about what value do they provide me beyond a check? And that for me specifically, I saw it as the same way we were talking about mentorship. I saw it as each of these checks is strategic partnerships that I could leverage.
I was just about to say that on our end, we don't even invest unless we have the resources outside the capital for that entrepreneur. So to me, that is key. You want a strategic partner. You can get cash from anybody if the doors of the floodgates are just open, but you want that kind of marriage. So often women don't feel worthy. I was listening to a story the other day of Tyler Perry. He was talking about his mother when he got successful and she wouldn't basically move into a new home and all these other things. And at the end of the day, he got to the root of it is because she just didn't feel worthy of it. And I was like, oh my gosh.
That's real.
So many women, it is real.
Yeah.
They don't feel worthy of it. And you have to know that. You have to have that worth and that self-worth. Recently, one of our portfolios companies, they got approached by a few people who wanted to acquire them. And she said, if you're willing to buy me out for this, she said, give me 5 years.
Exactly.
She said, I know my worth. And I'm like, you go ahead, Sheena.
That gave me goosebumps because it's real, right?
Yeah.
Like, don't sell yourself short.
Someone always said on a Create Cultivate panel, know your worth and then ask for double. So true.
Oh,
It's so
that's
true.
good.
Well, thank you guys so much for this super important conversation and these amazing tidbits. It's really such an important conversation that we're excited to see hopefully turn in the right direction.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sonia. I'm super excited to be joining Jaclyn and Mastercard and the whole Create and Cultivate family to be talking about diversity and inclusion and how to hire around it, how to retain great employees, and all of that good stuff. On a personal note, I am half Chinese, half Finnish. I'm both American and Canadian. And so personally, growing up, I never saw anyone that looked like me anywhere, pretty much. There was one person on TV, Connie Chung, I think that was her name. She was a newscaster. That was quite literally the only person that I had to look up to and connect with. So diversity and the topic of diversity has always been very personal to me. I'm very passionate about it, not just because I felt and understood the impact throughout my entire life, but because when I was in journalism school, we had a full 1-year course on diversity, inclusion, and bias. And I think that's really interesting. And I want to use that expertise that I have, that education that I got, and give you the best nuggets of it to help you and your business and your company. My guess is not many of you have ever taken a course on diversity. And so I'm really excited to be sharing all of this with you. Aside from being an entrepreneur for 12 years, and my current team, although there's someone on maternity, some people are furloughed, some people have gone from full-time to part-time because of COVID, my full team right now, 100%, we all identify as BIPOC. So I think that that's a testament. And I'm excited to get started. So I'm gonna talk about 3 things today. I'm gonna talk about how to expand your brand online and utilize your brand's presence to, in fact, appeal to diverse candidates and diverse audiences. Because if you are doing that, that's going to help the next 2 things that I'm going to talk about a lot. The second thing I'm going to talk about is retention tactics. How do you keep diverse talent? How do you make sure that they stay with you? And then the third thing I'm going to talk about is fostering an inclusive, positive work environment. And those last 2 things will be much easier if you have an employee group that is very diverse. And so the first thing that I talked about, which is expanding your brand online, that's really important, because if you are already reaching and talking to everyone, most likely your employees and your team is going to reflect that as well. And so you're already doing a better job. So the first thing is, how can you expand your brand online to reach more audiences, a more diverse group of people? Well, that is simple. Start talking to them. The way that you communicate is very important. There are a few different ways to communicate. You can communicate visually, which is through photography, graphic design. You can communicate through words, so emails that you write, email newsletters, the copy that you see on your website, right? So there are those different ways that you can communicate. And the goal here is for you and your brand to be communicating to everyone. So I want you to take a minute and scroll through your social media feed. I want you to tell me whether you think you've done a good job. So you're just going to scroll. While I continue talking, I want you to look at your own social media feed right now and do a quick scroll. Do you think that you are representing all different types of people? Do you think that you are showing different types of people? So if you are a beauty company, are you showing constantly smooth, perfect skin? Or are you using models that might be older and are aging and don't have like the perfect smooth skin? Because that's going to widen your reach right there. Depending on if you do product photography, if you use models, if you don't use models, you know, are you showing all the different shades of skin that are out there? Because if you're not, and as you're scrolling, and I'm talking about this right now, if you have a candle line or you are a florist and you start to realize as you're scrolling right now, most of the photos on my social media feed only represent one or two types of people. So this is a great place to be because it means that you can only improve from here. So I'm glad that you are watching right now and you are listening and hearing that advice. So I want all of you to start using photography that visually shows all different types of people, because instantly you're going to attract all different types of people. That will help you in your recruiting and your hiring. When you're looking for interns, that's going to help you. And to be perfectly honest, it's going to help your business because you are going to be selling to that many more people, right? When you talk to everyone, everyone listens. It's a really important lesson. So you've improved social media. You need to do that. I want you to also analyze your website. If I'm someone who is coming out of college and I'm looking for a job and I see a job listing and I go to your website and I surf and I look at the about page, I look at the history, I look at photo albums potentially, even just looking at product photography and just really all the pages, analyze all the pages on your website. Again, does your photography show a diverse group of people? If not, you need to improve and change that immediately. It even comes down to attracting people to your brand and what you do through the types of language that you use. And one example here is names, first and last names. A lot of websites, I surf a lot of your websites all the time, and a lot of you sell products. And so you have product reviews. It's interesting to me because a lot of the product reviews, either they're auto-generated, so you have no control over that, but a lot of your websites are much more visually beautiful. And so you are choosing reviews and you're like putting them up there and you've done a little bit of graphic design work to feature them. Well, most of the names that I read when I'm looking at people's websites with reviews, product reviews, they're very basic. And I guess what I mean to say is they're not diverse at all. So think about that as well. If people have given you reviews, even the names seen on your website and the employees that you choose to feature and their names and their faces, all of this matters because as someone who is an Asian American mixed race person, when I go to a website and I see all of that stuff, I think this is a company I'd like to work for. This is a company that I would like to involve myself with. So again, it's visual and it's written. Think about that. So once you've kind of refreshed and updated your brand in social media and online to speak to everyone, which is going to appeal to more people, you're going to have a better chance at recruiting and attracting great talent from all different places around the world. So once you've got great talent, a question that a lot of people have right now is, how do I retain them? And especially for all the small business owners out there, we don't have a lot of money to have like fancy perks, work for 3 years and you get a car lease, free food, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Small business owners, we do not have those resources. So it's a very practical question to wonder, like, how can you retain the diverse talent that you have, especially in 2020, when now everyone is looking for great, great diverse talent. So here's a couple of the things that I think you can keep in mind. Number one, you need to have great leadership, right? Everyone who's a leader or a manager, they all need to be people who foster inclusive, open, positive environments. They need to be the types of leaders who are easy to talk to, and the types of leaders who employees feel comfortable coming to with issues, problems, if they have feedback. Because one of the biggest things that I've seen in all my years of being both an entrepreneur and working in corporate is you can talk the talk, but if you do not walk the walk, that's when you will lose all of your great employees. You can't say in a press release or on your website or on social media, you can't say we care about everyone, and then not be willing to have those deep, uncomfortable, real conversations, right? So you want to make sure that all of the people who are in leadership roles for you and yourself are the types of people who are ready to have those conversations, open to it, and that they are empathetic and respectful when having these conversations. So good leadership is a must. The second thing is that you need to be able to listen, right? Listen to your employees, listen to your customers, listen to your followers. People are going to give you feedback and help shape your company and help you grow. And so be open to that and be someone who listens. If you listen to your employees, if the minority that work for you are BIPOC, they're already the minority. So coming to you, talking to you is already going to be a little scary and intimidating potentially. And so make sure that everyone knows, all positions, make sure everyone knows that you are here to listen and you truly need to listen to them. If you do that, I think that goes a long way. Business owners and founders who listen to all their employees, who sometimes reach out to certain employees to get feedback. Like, hey, I haven't heard from customers. I haven't heard from this group of people in a really long time, or this new employee started and I realized that they're the only Asian employee in the whole company. Like, why not take the time also? Don't wait for them to come to you. Reach out to them and say, hey, wanted to see how things were going. Again, be a leader who is willing to listen and communicate and have those conversations. I think that you can create tracks for promotions. This is really important. I know that in the corporate world, this is something that everyone is kind of scrambling to do and figuring out. Create tracks for specifically for promotion. Make sure that people are in the room. Make sure that you create seats at the table for everyone. So if you have management right now and you look around and you don't have anyone who is a person of color, that's probably an issue. You probably need to create a goal for yourself right now as a company, and start to set those goals. But again, retaining employees means keeping them happy. And honestly, retaining employees a lot of the time has nothing to do with money and perks. It's their happiness and their sense of pride at work. So if they are happy working for you, if they are proud to be doing the work that they're doing for you, and they feel like they are doing good and they're proud of what the company does in general and what they do, most likely you're going to have a better chance at retaining them. So it's funny. I think about the movie Mean Girls a lot. I don't know why, but Mean Girls to me is a great example. You don't want to be a mean girl. It's that simple. And it's really easy not to be one, right? So again, treat people with respect, listen to them, be open to conversation. That's going to help you retain them. And then the last thing to keep in mind is sit down and take the time to think about how you can create new opportunities for all of your employees, but especially thinking about employees who are at the very, very beginnings of their career, right? People who are just starting. So how can you help them grow and thrive? And I believe that if you think about that and put time and energy into them, they are going to give you tenfold of their time and energy. And again, it's like I said, no one wants to work for a mean girl, and no one wants to work for someone and in an environment where they don't feel valued and listened to. Honestly, there are studies, Google this. It has nothing to do about the pay. It's shocking to hear that, but it's true. People stay in jobs when they really love what they're doing and they feel valued. So it's very simple. Treat others the way you want to be treated. Make sure to show that you have a track for people to get promoted and grow within the company. Make sure that you show that you are working on diversity and inclusion documents. Make sure that when you onboard new employees, you have a culture handbook. These are all things that you can do to just help create that great environment. And then the last thing I just really started to speak to, which is creating and fostering a culture of inclusiveness. So again, it starts at the beginning, right? When someone comes to work for you, you onboard them with the culture handbook. If you do not know what I'm talking about, Google culture handbook, Google employee handbook. These are all really important documents that set the stage for someone's work life with you and your company. And if you start up here and lead, then people will respond really well to that and follow and take your lead. Another thing that you can do to foster inclusiveness, again, is think about a calendar year and create events, right? We don't have a lot of time. We're doing 1,000 things. And also currently we're all working remotely, which is even stranger, but you need to put time and energy into fostering a great work environment, and fostering specifically a sense of inclusiveness. So the way that you can do this is look at your calendar year and say, you know what, I think it's realistic for me to do a quarterly event, something for all of the employees where we get together and we do something or we celebrate. So think about what you can do right now in what you do. Maybe it's a virtual happy hour, but it's not just about having a virtual happy hour. I want to throw this out there. Again, the culture of inclusiveness means you want people to know, not think, but to know that you care about them. So you need to be active in this. So you set a virtual happy hour for all of your employees. You send them all something, and then find ways for your employees to shine, right? Again, small business owners don't have a ton of money. You can't be like, you get a raise and you get a raise and you get a raise, especially right now in this financial climate that we're in. However, you can find ways to let people shine, take on more leadership, and grow. And so if there's an employee that that most people don't really know very well or is a little bit shyer, get them to plan something for the virtual happy hour. Get them to plan the next thing, right? I think fostering a culture of inclusiveness means including everyone. Everyone needs to be part of the conversation. And sometimes people need to be forced out of their comfort zone, which is why a lot of large companies, if you've never worked for a large corporation before, they have all of these like subgroups. I almost want to, like, how do I describe this? They're not, they're like social groups. I don't know if that makes any sense or not. So I was on the diversity board for a major media company, and all of us were on this board, and we would meet once a month and talk about ways to increase diversity at the company and raising numbers of, I was in Canada at the time, so it was very specific. Like, how can we get more women to apply? How can we hire more women? So again, fostering inclusivity means you need to talk to everyone and make them proud and have fun at the company. So involve them, and do things that allow them to shine and tell their stories too. So it's not always about you and your business. That gets old. I mean, they're working for you, what, 5 days a week? The bulk of their time is going to you and your business. So take the time to learn about them. Take the time to share their stories, or give them moments to shine on your website, or in a blog interview, or in an interview video that goes on to Instagram. There's lots of different ways to do this. But again, it's just about fostering this idea of diversity and inclusion and involving voices that don't normally get to be heard. It's that simple. So hopefully this has helped. You are going to increase your diversity and what everyone is seeing from the company on your website and social media, email, newsletters. You're going to create some tactics and very specific metrics and goals for your hiring practices. And then you're going to foster a great inclusive company and not be a mean girl. I swear, that's my number one tip in everything all the time. It's simple. Don't be a mean girl. Love everyone. Let everyone have a chance to shine. Let them speak their minds. And you will do great. Thank you, everyone, for watching.
Now, before we wrap up today's conversation, we're going to answer some questions from our audience. Question number 1. I want to ensure the team of my small business represents our diverse community, but changing a workplace culture is an enormous and daunting undertaking. Where do I start with D&I, and how can I be transparent about my progress without alienating my community? I'm not afraid of being held accountable, but I am worried about being canceled.
First, I'd like to commend you on wanting to make your small business a more diverse and inclusive company. That's first. Second, I would like to say, take your community onto the journey with you. The reality is, the world is changing and progress has to be made. And I think they will understand that you're on this journey to make your company more progressive. So I would definitely say, have the discussions with your community. Say, you know what? We're building out our new advisory board, and this is what it's going to look like. We're building out our new staff, and this is what it's going to look like. We understand that having diverse representation in our business is going to also help increase our bottom line. Nobody can be upset with that.
I echo the same thing, progress over perfection, and I also applaud you, because the first step to actually having a diverse company is recognizing it and wanting to take the action. So I get the whole fear of cancel culture, I totally get it, but the best thing you can do is be vulnerable and honest with your audience.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think coming out and being vulnerable and authentic and saying, I'm still figuring it out, but here's the steps I'm taking, I think that is really, really important, and people will respect that you're making the effort as part of your small business. So question number 2, how can I become more aware of my own biases? What training or educational resources do you recommend to dismantle unconscious bias for myself as a leader, but also for my team? What can I do to expand my understanding of diversity and inclusion?
Oh, that's such a loaded question.
It's heavy.
To start, I guess you would say the end and kind of work up. Diversity and inclusion gets thrown around a lot. To be diverse does not always mean that you're being inclusive. So you want to make sure that you're completely inclusive. So say, if I'll use myself for example, the African American population is 14% of the country, but is that the same exact percentage that's represented in your business? If it's just one black face to go here and there, does this really mean that you're being inclusive, or you're just being diverse? So that's first and foremost. And when it comes to different biases that you may have, one, give yourself some grace. People are raised around whatever culture you're raised around, and some things are not necessarily that you are, I would say, like a conscious decision. In your subconscious, you may have biases that you're just not even aware of. But there are plenty of books out right now that you can definitely go read. I'm not sure the race of the person who I'm speaking to, but I would definitely say just to research, because at a time where racial injustice has been a very big subject, there's a plethora of books out there that teach you how to deal with your own biases.
Yeah, and you know, I would say like beyond your business world, look at your personal life and who you're surrounding yourself with, because when you really take a lens and look into that, you might be surprised by unconscious decisions that happen just because of the people you're surrounded by. And so for me, something I actively think about is how can I surround myself professionally and personally around the most diverse and inclusive community.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many online resources as well. And you know, it's not about not being racist, it's about being anti-racist and practicing that every single day, you know, in whatever way you can. But I think the unconscious bias is the thing that gets people. So be sure to make sure you can go online and take these tests that will open your eyes to a whole new level. So there's so many resources out there. I definitely recommend checking those out. Question 3, I'm taking the steps to create a diverse and inclusive environment in my small business, but I'm worried that the steps I'm taking are too small or not fast enough. What time frame do you think is reasonable for small business to implement D&I, or do you think it's always a work in progress? How often should I be sharing our progress with my community? Great question.
That's an excellent question. I will definitely say that systemic issues did not come here overnight, so they're not going to be erased overnight. So it's going to be your duty just to take the small steps, and small steps over time will lead to big steps and further progression. Don't be upset that you're like, oh gosh, we only made these adjustments here. Hey, you made progress. And as long as you continue to operate in that fashion and move the needle in that direction, you'll get there. And yes, this will be a continual discussion and continual situation.
Yeah, I would say it's one of those things that you have to get really introspective and really look at yourself and really think about how you're doing this. Is it performative, or does it really truly feel like something inside of you that's creating progress? And it's always going to be a work in progress. So again, be lenient on yourself in that. But as long as you're caring and making the effort, that's what really matters.
Yeah, I totally agree. Progress over perfection. Thank you everyone for watching this priceless conversation on fostering an inclusive small business community. This is the final episode in our series, but you can watch all of them again on the Create and Cultivate YouTube channel. If you want to learn more about how Mastercard can help your small business, please visit mastercard.com to learn more about their Digital Doors program. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope that this information will arm you with the tools you need to not only survive, but thrive in this moment and beyond.